Hey everyone, and welcome back to another deep dive from The Explainer. Today, we are taking on a bit of a watchdog mission. We're going to decode one of the most critical, yet honestly one of the most misunderstood functions of our government, and that's public procurement. From the exact moment a tax dollar is budgeted to the day a new bridge is actually built or a service is delivered, there is a very strict life cycle that has to be followed. So our goal today is to really understand the framework of the new Government Procurement Act. We want to know exactly what the rules of the game are so we can spot when they're broken.
But right before we trace the path of our public funds, I actually have a quick question for you. Which stage of the procurement cycle do you think is the most vulnerable to corruption or waste? Do you think it's the planning phase, the bidding wars, or maybe even after the contract is already signed? Let me know and cast your vote in the comments right now. Your answer might actually surprise you and us. Keep your answer in mind as we outline exactly where these vulnerabilities lie.
Okay, let's dive into this. To truly understand government spending, we're going to follow a tax dollar across 5 distinct stages today: planning the public budget, choosing the right method, bidding and evaluation safeguards, awarding the final contract, and finally, the delivery and post-award rules.
All right, Section 1. Planning the public budget. What you really need to know here is that true accountability starts long before a single dollar is actually spent.
Under the new Government Procurement Act, which is officially known as RA 12009, every single purchase the government makes is anchored on 5 core principles. First off, the state aims to achieve value for money to make sure public funds are used responsibly. But look closely at the others: transparency and accountability, participatory procurement, sustainability, and professionalism. The law literally mandates that accountability means public officials have to take responsibility for their actions, and that everyday citizens, like you and me, have a right to monitor this entire process.
So how does an idea actually become an approved budget item? Well, it follows a very strict chain of command. First, the end user drafts a Project Procurement Management Plan, or PPMP, which justifies the actual need. Next, the Bids and Awards Committee, the BAC, consolidates all of these plans into an indicative annual procurement plan, known as the APP. Finally, the head of the procuring entity, or the HOPE, has to approve it. And here is the golden rule you have to remember: no government procurement can happen unless it is strictly in this approved APP. Literally, if it's not on the list, they cannot buy it.
So the crucial point in that first planning phase is a mandatory step called market scoping. This forces government agencies to properly estimate their costs, understand industry practices, and determine exact technical criteria before they ever ask for a single dime. This rule stops governments from just guessing costs out of thin air, and it's the primary shield against overpricing right out of the gate.
Moving right along to Section 2, choosing the right method. Now that the budget is planned and approved, we shift to the actual buying process. And here's a fun fact: the government doesn't just buy everything the exact same way.
RA 1209 uses what's called a fit-for-purpose approach. Competitive bidding is the absolute default mode, meaning it's open to all eligible bidders to ensure equal opportunity. However, there are alternative modes, like direct contracting, small value procurement, or unsolicited offers with bid matching. But these can only be used if very specific, super strict conditions are met. The law requires the default to be competitive unless skipping it is thoroughly justified. To give you a real idea of how strict these alternative modes are, let's look at 2 specific monetary thresholds. The difference is actually staggering. If an agency wants to use small value procurement to skip the massive competitive bidding process, the maximum approved budget cannot exceed 2 million pesos. But for a direct acquisition, which is just buying an item straight off the shelf from a known supplier, the limit drops dramatically to a maximum of 200,000 pesos. These legal boundaries are specifically designed to prevent agencies from splitting massive contracts into tiny ones just to fly under the radar and avoid public scrutiny.
Okay, Section 3, bidding and evaluation safeguards. This is by far the most competitive part of the cycle, where vendors really fight for the contract. And honestly, this is exactly where watchdogs need to be on high alert.
During the evaluation phase, the government relies on a framework called MEARB. Yeah, I know, it stands for the Most Economically Advantageous Responsive Bid. It sounds like heavy legal jargon, but the actual purpose behind it is brilliant. Instead of just automatically handing a contract to whoever offers the absolute cheapest price, MEARB uses a weighted ratio to balance both quality and price. This is absolutely vital because it protects citizens from ending up with cheap, terrible infrastructure that just falls apart in a year. It factors in actual value for money.
But you might be wondering, who is actually watching the evaluators? Well, this is where you come in. Section 43 of the Implementing Rules and Regulations outlines the ultimate watchdogs. During these bidding proceedings, the Bids and Awards Committee is legally required to invite at least 2 non-voting observers. One has to come from a recognized private industry group, and the other must be from a civil society organization or a people's organization. And they must have absolutely zero direct or indirect interest in the project. You, and the organizations that represent you, have a legal right to sit right there in the room and monitor how your tax dollars are being promised.
Next up, Section 4, awarding the final contract. Once that evaluation is all done, we move into the phase where a winner is officially chosen. And you need to know, this happens way faster than most people might think.
The award timeline is actually incredibly rapid. First, the BAC identifies the winning MERB. Next, the head of the procuring entity has a shockingly fast window of just 2 calendar days to approve or disapprove that ranking. Just 2 days. If it's approved, the bidder then undergoes post-qualification, which is a deep dive to verify all their legal, technical, and financial claims. Only if they survive that scrutiny is the contract officially awarded. Now, what's really interesting about this slide is the critical fine print. The BAC resolution to award a contract is utterly useless and completely illegal without the authorized funding that was established way back in Step 1. The government literally cannot award a contract without strict, documented proof of available budget appropriations in the General Appropriations Act.
And that brings us to Section 5, Delivery and Post-Award Rules. This is the last, and frankly, it is the most ignored stage of the entire procurement cycle.
To frame this, I want to share a great quote from the contract management experts at Hyperstart. You've just signed a significant contract. The real work begins now. We really need to completely reframe our mindset here. Signing the contract is not the finish line, not at all. It is just the beginning of holding these vendors accountable to the exact promises they made during the bidding phase.
A massive vulnerability actually happens right here at the very end. A contract isn't closed just because a vendor dropped off some supplies. According to federal guidelines, proper contract closeout only happens when absolutely every term is met. All administrative actions are completely finished, and any disputes are settled. Proper closeout is what ensures invoices are actually paid, and crucially, it ensures that any remaining unused tax dollars are safely deobligated and returned to the government, instead of just bleeding out to interest payments or getting lost in the system forever. And this brilliantly illustrates just how rigorous that final step has to be. Before a file is closed, the government has to complete contract audits, clear final patent and royalty reports, get property clearances, and confirm the actual delivery. Strict inspection committees, often with the help of those same watchdog CSOs we talked about earlier, make sure the government got the exact quality they paid for before that final invoice is ever cleared. So, from drafting that very first budget plan to running through the final audit checklist, understanding these stages is absolutely your best tool as a focused learner. Know the rules of the game so you can spot when they are broken. Whether it's some unapproved items slipping into a budget, a skipped market scoping step, or a failed post-qualification, transparency isn't just some government buzzword. It is your legal right and your civic responsibility to demand it.
So, having seen the entire life cycle now, where do you think the system is most vulnerable? We asked this at the start, and now you've got the full picture. But remember, a system is really only as honest as the people running it. So who exactly holds the keys to the treasury? Join us in our next explainer as we answer the question, who's who in public procurement? We are going to put faces to the titles, from the end users to the BAC, right up to the Hope, and show you exactly who is responsible for spending your tax money. You definitely won't want to miss it. See you then.
Please follow, support, and share this advocacy. Thank you for watching.